In the world of power and prestige, success doesn't always guarantee respect. Our story begins on a chilly Friday evening as Marcus, a highly accomplished black CEO, pulls up to the grand entrance of a luxurious five-star hotel. Dressed sharply in a custom-tailored suit and stepping out of his sleek black car, Marcus was ready to unwind after a grueling week of meetings and negotiations. But as he approached the reception desk, the warm welcome he expected quickly turned cold. The receptionist barely glanced at him before dismissively saying, "I'm sorry, sir. We're fully booked." Marcus, puzzled, calmly explained that he had made a reservation weeks in advance and even had the confirmation on his phone. But her polite mask slipped, and a security guard subtly stepped closer. The undertones of her attitude were unmistakable. Marcus wasn't being denied because of his lack of status, but because of the color of his skin. Disheartened but not defeated, Marcus left quietly, refusing to let the humiliation show. Yet, as he walked out into the night, his mind raced. This wasn't the first time he had faced such discrimination, but something about this experience struck a deeper chord. He decided that this time he wouldn't just let it slide. What Marcus did next would shape the very foundation of the hotel's reputation. It wasn't anger that fueled his response. It was something far more calculated and impactful. With his sharp business acumen and connections, Marcus set a plan in motion that no one saw coming. By the time the hotel realized who they had underestimated, it was too late. Marcus's move wasn't just about revenge. It was about making a point, one that would force people to confront uncomfortable truths about privilege, prejudice, and respect. Stay tuned, because what unfolds next is a masterclass in turning disrespect into a powerful, unforgettable statement. You won't want to miss how Marcus's brilliance not only exposes injustice, but changes the game entirely. As Marcus walked away from the hotel, his mind replayed the events in vivid detail. He wasn't just hurt by the rejection. He was angry at the blatant disregard for everything he had worked so hard to achieve. Growing up in a small town, Marcus had faced countless obstacles, but he always pushed forward. From scholarships to late nights in college, to climbing the corporate ladder, he had earned every bit of his success. And yet, here he was treated as if none of it mattered. But Marcus wasn't the type to lash out. He believed in strategy, in patience, and in letting actions speak louder than words. Sitting in his car, he made a phone call to his assistant, Brianna, someone he trusted implicitly. He explained the situation calmly, though his voice carried the weight of his frustration. Brianna, just as sharp and determined as Marcus, immediately started researching the hotel and its management. Within minutes, she uncovered something that caught Marcus' attention: a string of complaints online about similar incidents involving other guests. Meanwhile, Marcus couldn't stop thinking about the way the receptionist looked at him, as though he didn't belong. It wasn't the first time he'd been underestimated, but it fueled his determination to expose the prejudice that so many others had likely endured at this same hotel. He decided that this wasn't just about him anymore. It was about creating accountability. Over the next few days, Marcus quietly worked behind the scenes. He reached out to friends and associates in the hospitality industry, gathering information. His network was extensive, and it wasn't long before he found an unexpected ally, someone who knew the inner workings of the hotel. What Marcus discovered about the hotel's practices made his resolve even stronger. He wasn't just planning to make a statement. He was laying the groundwork for a move that would turn the hotel's reputation upside down. The pieces of his plan were falling into place, but the question remained: how far would Marcus go to ensure his message was heard? As the days unfolded, Marcus became more focused, turning his frustration into a calculated mission. The ally he had found within the hotel, a former employee named Carlos, provided valuable insight into its operations. Carlos explained that the hotel's management had a long-standing reputation for catering to a very specific clientele, one that often excluded people like Marcus, no matter how successful or influential they were. Carlos shared stories of guests who were denied service for no clear reason, employees who were silenced after raising concerns, and policies that seemed designed to favor appearances over fairness. Marcus listened carefully, his anger simmering but controlled. This wasn't just a one-time slight. It was a systemic issue, and now he had proof. At the same time, Marcus's assistant, Brianna, had been digging into the hotel's ownership. What she found was a web of influential investors and executives who prided themselves on exclusivity. Yet, Marcus knew from his experience in business that even the most powerful institutions had vulnerabilities. He began mapping out a strategy, not to attack the hotel outright, but to expose its practices in a way that couldn't be ignored. While Marcus worked behind the scenes, the hotel remained blissfully unaware of the storm brewing in its shadow. Guests continued to sip champagne in its grand lobby, oblivious to the fact that their luxurious haven was about to face scrutiny like never before. Adding another layer of complexity, Marcus began reaching out to others who had experienced similar discrimination. Their stories were heartbreaking yet powerful, and they fueled his determination. One woman, a single mother who had saved for months to celebrate her daughter's graduation at the hotel, was turned away without explanation. Another man, a veteran, shared a similar tale of being humiliated despite having a confirmed reservation. As the pieces of Marcus's plan started coming together, he knew it wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about giving a voice to those who had been silenced, about forcing change in an industry that often ignored accountability. But the clock was ticking, and Marcus had to make his next move carefully. One wrong step, and the entire plan could fall apart. Marcus's plan was nearing its final stages, but every move had to be precise. Through Carlos, Brianna, and his growing network of allies, Marcus had compiled a mountain of evidence, testimonies, internal documents, and even surveillance footage that painted a damning picture of the hotel's discriminatory practices. Yet, he knew that simply exposing the truth wouldn't be enough. To make a lasting impact, the timing and execution had to be flawless. He decided to host a private event, a bold and calculated step. Marcus rented an upscale venue in the same city, just a few blocks away from the hotel. Invitations were sent to key media outlets, influential community leaders, and a few surprise guests who would ensure the event couldn't be ignored. He named the gathering Exclusivity Redefined, a title that hinted at his intentions without revealing too much. On the night of the event, the atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. As the guests mingled, whispers spread about what Marcus was planning to reveal. Cameras flashed, journalists exchanged hurried notes, and the tension in the room grew with every passing moment. Meanwhile, back at the hotel, a few managers had caught wind of the event. They dismissed it at first, but as they noticed notable figures leaving their establishment to attend Marcus's gathering, unease began to creep in. Marcus had intentionally kept them in the dark, but now they were starting to realize that something much bigger was happening right under their noses. As the crowd settled, Marcus took the stage. His presence commanded attention, not just because of his success, but because of the calm yet determined energy he exuded. He began by sharing his story, starting with the night he was turned away. His words were measured, but each one carried the weight of truth. Then, as he promised to expose what went on behind the hotel's closed doors, Marcus signaled for the first piece of evidence to be displayed. The room fell silent as images and documents appeared on a large screen, revealing practices that shocked even the most seasoned journalists. The audience leaned in, hungry for more, as Marcus paused. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for, but what he revealed next would leave them speechless. The room was utterly silent, the only sound the faint hum of the projector as evidence continued to flash on the screen. Marcus stood confidently, his words cutting through the tension like a knife. He detailed the hotel's history of subtle discrimination, carefully connecting each piece of evidence to the broader pattern of exclusion. Gasps rippled through the audience as receipts, emails, and statements from former employees came to light. Yet, just when it seemed like Marcus had laid all his cards on the table, he paused. Taking a deep breath, Marcus turned to the audience. But there's more to this story, he said, his voice calm but laced with intensity. What if I told you that the actions of this hotel aren't just isolated incidents, but part of a broader practice among several establishments in this chain? The crowd shifted, murmurs spreading like wildfire. At that moment, Brianna, seated in the front row, nodded to Marcus. She had uncovered something just days earlier that even Marcus hadn't anticipated. A network of luxury hotels under the same ownership, all following the same unspoken policies. It wasn't just one hotel, it was an empire. Marcus revealed damning connections between the establishments, showing how systemic discrimination had been quietly embedded into their operations. As the audience absorbed this twist, a commotion erupted near the back of the room. A man in an expensive suit, flanked by two others, had entered the venue. It was none other than one of the hotel chain's top executives. His presence was unplanned, but Marcus recognized the opportunity. "You're just in time," Marcus said, addressing the executive directly. "Perhaps you'd like to explain why so many of your hotels seem to have the same troubling track record." The tension in the room reached a fever pitch. Cameras zoomed in, reporters scribbled furiously, and all eyes turned to the visibly uncomfortable executive. Caught off guard, the man stammered out a denial, but Marcus wasn't done yet. With a knowing look, he gestured toward the screen. "Let's hear what your own employees had to say." The next clip began to play, and the audience braced themselves for what was coming. The room held its collective breath as the video began to play. On the screen, a former manager from the hotel chain, his voice altered for anonymity, described the unwritten rules that guided their operations. "We were told to prioritize guests who fit the brand image," the voice said. "If someone didn't look the part, well, we find an excuse. It wasn't written anywhere, but everyone understood what it meant." The executive, standing frozen near the back of the room, shifted uncomfortably as the audience turned to him, their expressions a mix of shock and outrage. Marcus didn't let up. "This isn't just about me," he said, his voice steady but powerful. "It's about every person who's been told they're not good enough, not welcome, not equal. And it stops here." As the video ended, the tension reached its peak. Marcus turned back to the audience. "This is where I draw the line," he declared. "I filed formal complaints, provided this evidence to regulatory bodies, and connected with advocates who are ready to hold this chain accountable." The crowd erupted in applause, a wave of energy rippling through the room. But just as it seemed the story had reached its resolution, Marcus added one final twist. He revealed that, through a silent partnership, he had acquired a controlling interest in a boutique hotel directly across the street from the very hotel that had denied him. The crowd gasped as Marcus smiled, his calm confidence unshaken. "This is where we redefine hospitality," he announced. "A place where everyone is treated with dignity, where exclusivity isn't about keeping people out, but about making everyone feel exceptional." The executive's face turned pale as the realization sunk in. Marcus hadn't just exposed their practices, he had positioned himself to become their direct competitor. As the applause grew louder, Marcus stepped off the stage, shaking hands and exchanging smiles with supporters. The night wasn't just about unveiling the truth. It was about turning pain into power and ensuring no one else had to face what he had endured. As the event came to a close, Marcus walked through the crowd, exchanging handshakes and heartfelt conversations. The energy in the room had shifted from outrage to hope, a sense that real change was possible. People shared their own stories of resilience and discrimination, finding comfort in knowing they were no longer alone. The executive, realizing the weight of the situation, left quietly, his attempts at damage control already underway. But Marcus knew the story wasn't over for the hotel chain. The evidence was out, the media was buzzing, and public pressure was mounting. Within days, the hotel chain's practices would become the subject of intense scrutiny, with regulators and activists demanding accountability. Meanwhile, Marcus poured his energy into his newly acquired boutique hotel, transforming it into a beacon of inclusivity and excellence. He worked closely with Brianna and his team to ensure every guest felt valued, regardless of their background. The hotel quickly gained a reputation as the place to stay, not just for its luxury, but for the respect and warmth it offered to everyone who walked through its doors. Carlos, the former employee who had shared his insight, found a new role at Marcus's hotel. For the first time in years, he felt proud to be part of the industry again. Other employees from the chain, inspired by Marcus's leadership, began reaching out, hoping to join a company that truly stood for something. As weeks turned into months, Marcus reflected on how one moment of humiliation had sparked a movement. What had started as a personal experience of discrimination had become a powerful statement against systemic injustice. His story spread far and wide, inspiring others to stand up for their rights and challenge the status quo. In the end, Marcus didn't just change the narrative, he rewrote the rules. His journey was a testament to resilience, to using power and influence for good, and to never letting anyone tell you where you don't belong. And as he looked out over his thriving hotel, filled with smiling faces, Marcus knew he had done more than prove a point. He had made a lasting difference.